Hey, what's up, you guys? I'm gonna try to put out 2 videos this week, and see if I can keep that going. So for this video, I'm gonna talk about hiring a coach, when to do it, and why. So the biggest thing I think is when. There can be different points depending on your sport, depending on yourself, what your goals are. So I'll start with an example of someone who's interested in powerlifting, but they have never lifted weights before, right? If you're someone who's never lifted weights before, but you're interested in powerlifting, maybe you know somebody who powerlifts and want to follow in their footsteps, something like that. I would say, honestly, you can hire a coach right off the bat, but it might be in your best interest to start training on your own, kind of learn a little bit about yourself, your body, like what works for you, what doesn't, learn kind of how to push yourself, start getting an idea of how to gauge RPE, or rate of perceived exertion, and maybe even learn about programming on your own. There's plenty of free programs online. Even something like Starting Strength, it works if you've never lifted weights before. Like, you'll make progress doing that. If you check out like Wendler's 531, that's good. Candido has, in my opinion, some of the greatest free programs out there, especially if you're someone who has lifted weights and you're looking to just specifically be more into powerlifting. But anyway, point being, if you're someone who's just beginning but you're already interested in powerlifting, you can get started with that process of finding a coach and hiring a coach sooner, in my opinion. Second example, if you're someone who has been lifting weights for a while, but you're interested in now maybe pursuing powerlifting, I would honestly say dedicating a few months at the very least. I'll say 6 months as a general number, to dedicate to figuring out powerlifting training for yourself. The reason I say that is because if you're someone who's been lifting weights for a while, you probably don't need an accountability partner or someone to just make sure that you're going to the gym multiple times a week, and training relatively hard consistently. And that's part of what a coach's job is, and especially someone like a personal trainer like myself, that's what, as a personal trainer, that's a large part of what I get paid for, is to just make sure you show up. So if you're someone who's already able to do that, and you have some training under your belt, spending some time to learn about programming for yourself and what works for you, what doesn't, I think can be helpful. And then if you're someone who has been self-programmed for a while and you're thinking about getting a coach, like you've been training for powerlifting, you've done meets, and you're thinking that maybe it's time to get a coach, I would say get a coach now. The sooner the better. And the reason I say that is because if you're someone who's advanced or let's just say relatively advanced, you've made a lot of progress on your own and you're starting to think that maybe you could benefit from a coach, that's probably because your progress is starting to stall, which is very normal. Or maybe you're starting to think that you need help being handled at meets, stuff like that. And getting a coach can make immediate improvements in that field. So I would highly recommend doing it. If you're advanced or you've been competing for a while and you're considering getting a coach, you should definitely get a coach. Okay. So that pretty much covers when I think you should get a coach, right? If you've been involved in it for a while and you start to think that you need a coach, you should get a coach. If you're just beginning and you're already interested in powerlifting, getting a coach off the bat isn't necessarily a bad idea, but getting some time to figure out the stuff for yourself, I think, can be helpful. And especially if you're someone who's already had a little bit of experience with general health and fitness, and you're starting to think you maybe want to specialize, spending some time to just figure out if that's something you actually like and what works for you, I think is the best idea, right? And no matter what, there's so much information out there for free, so many free programs, free videos on how to program, videos on technique, all that stuff. And you've got, a phone with a camera, you can record yourself and mess with things. So honestly, you really can go far, without a coach. And I don't think it's necessarily for everyone. But if you're thinking about it, I would try it. So now to the why. Why should you hire a coach, right? In my opinion, the single most important reason to have a coach, to hire a coach, is to have someone look at your training with a more objective eye, right? This can be programming and your actual training sessions, in terms of your technique and your intensity or intensiveness, which is your RP, how hard are you training? Having an objective eye to look at that can be extremely helpful. Why do I say that? Well, if you've been coaching yourself, and you're programming RPE, and you're doing week 1 RPE 6, week 2 RPE 7, so on and so forth, and you're making jumps that you think are reasonable, you might have someone, an outside perspective, look at your training and go, well, I'm watching your videos and I'm looking at what your RP says it's supposed to be, and it's not matching up. Maybe your RP 8 videos look like RP 6 or RP 5. Or maybe you're taking a set that you think should be an RP 7 and on camera really looks like an RP 9, right? And that can lead to different things, right? If you're training harder, or you're pushing the numbers harder, heavier, than what you're supposed to be doing, you might be hindering your progress because you're not recovering, you're hurting yourself, you have to cut blocks short because you ran yourself into a wall, or if you're not training hard enough, maybe you could be making progress at a faster rate if you were training harder, right? So that's the biggest thing. If you ask me, the number one reason to hire a coach is to have someone with a more objective perspective look at your training. Secondly, even if, let's say that you are very good at programming, and you spend a lot of time teaching yourself and learning from others, there's always more to learn, right? So the second most important reason to hire a coach, in my opinion, is that you don't know everything, right? Your coach doesn't know everything either. I'm not saying that your coach knows everything, but if you have had time, if you've learned about training and programming, and then you hire a coach, you can take what you know, maybe you know something about technique that your coach doesn't know, or something that works better for you, works really well for you that your coach doesn't know. You can explain that to your coach, or you can implement certain things into your training. For example, let's say that that when you set up on a certain accessory, you need extra range of motion, or you can go really deep and get greater benefits from it. And your coach doesn't necessarily prescribe you, a heel elevated split squat with, a 12-inch deficit, or whatever. But that works best for you, and he does prescribe you heel elevated split squats. You can add in that extra deficit so that you can go deeper, and you only knew that because of your own experiences. but your coach might know that you've been pushing that accessory too hard. Maybe your coach pulls back on the volume or the intensity, right? And like that might send you a new wave of progress that you would never have seen if you hadn't let someone else work on your training. Someone with a different experience and different knowledge than yourself. So yeah, those are the two main reasons that I would say that you should hire a coach. Have an objective perspective, outside objective perspective, looking at your training. And then you don't know everything. You can learn more. Sorry, it's my puppy. He's wanting to play. Even with that, if you hire a coach and it doesn't work out, or you guys don't get along, whatever, just doesn't happen to go the way that you expected it, you probably can learn something from the training that you guys went through. And you can take that with you when you go on to another coach, or if you self-program for a while after that. So there's always something to learn. All right. Now, what to look for in a coach, or how to find a coach. In my opinion, it's best to go with someone that you know, or someone that is in closer proximity to you. And what I mean by that is, if you happen to know someone who coaches people at your gym, or if someone that you know is a coach, someone that you've met, someone that you have some kind of experience with. The reason for that is because you most likely can have a more personal relationship, and you can communicate more effectively. There's probably going to be less of a concern about miscommunication, things like that. And if it's someone that trains at the same gym as you, and maybe even trains around the same time as you, maybe they'll catch things that they wouldn't before. Maybe your coach doesn't ask you to send videos of all your accessories, and so your coach doesn't see, you go RP 6 or 5 or 6 on an exercise, and you're supposed to go RP 8, right? Or you're leaving 10 reps in reserve when you're supposed to only be leaving 3 reps in reserve. And it makes it so that your coach has a chance to catch that potentially, without badgering you for more videos every week. So that, and then also typically, if they're in closer proximity to you, they maybe they coach someone that you know. And that's another big point to make, is that getting to know the athletes in their roster, right? So a lot of coaches can do a very good job of getting beginner lifters to being, intermediate or early intermediate lifters, right? To get someone who has never trained before to make great progress doesn't take a lot. Any free program out there will probably get you some kind of progress if you've never lifted before, or you're very new to the sport, right? Whereas if you see a coach who can take a newbie, a very early beginner, to an intermediate, and then from an intermediate to advanced, or to being excellent, that is a hallmark of a great coach, right? So when you're looking for a coach, finding someone who is close to you, someone who is nearby, either physically, or you have connections to his athletes or people who know him, someone whose reputation you trust, and then secondly, knowing their athletes. In my case, I got very lucky that I had 2 great coaches that trained at my gym in Tallahassee. So not only were they both coaches that I was in close proximity to, physically, I also had connections to their athletes, friends with their athletes.
and I got to see their athletes go from beginner to intermediate to advanced. And if you are lucky enough to have a situation like that, you know, I would take advantage of it, and go after a coach like that. So overall, you know, you should get a coach. You know, whenever you're starting to think that you maybe are wanting to compete, or if you've been doing this for a while and you just want to take everything to the next level, and you want to look for a coach who, you know, you can have a real relationship with and who's going to take you far. The biggest thing with hiring a coach is you want to have better results than you've been getting on your own, and you want to have long-term success. So that's my piece on when and why to get a coach. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you found this helpful, or if you feel like this is information that other people should see, please leave a like, comment, maybe even share this. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next video.